Yes. See you on the other side.
All right, hello everyone. My name is Felicia Heidemann, and I am one of the academic advisors for the University of Rochester Upward Bound program. I just want to take a moment and say thank you so much for being part of our virtual parent happy hour series. This is the last one we are hosting for this academic year, but it's been really good fun, and I'm excited to bring you not only 3 really great guests, but also 3 really wonderful people with tons of information to share that I think a lot of us will find very helpful. Before we get into it, I do have some updates to share, mostly about summer program. First and foremost, if you have not seen our summer town hall meeting from last Tuesday, so not yesterday, but the week before, please go ahead and do it. It's part of this YouTube channel. If you click on our little logo or just our channel name, you'll be able to find it. It has really good and important information, such as when summer begins. We're starting June 29th. It's going to be a pretty similar time frame to the programs we've had in past years. So June 29th is the start, but we're also going to share a lot of big changes, such as we are completely virtual. To keep everyone safe, we are having a virtual program. When we say that, please don't think that we're going to make your students sit in front of a computer screen for hours a day. We will be having different classes. We will be having different opportunities. Still a lot of that same fun too that you know from Upward Bound summers. So find out all that information, as well as the information about our new stipend for this summer. It's for this summer only. But to help encourage students to come, you get to take and earn different monetary amounts based on completing different slices of the college application pie. This summer, we are doing no losses, only lessons. And what better lesson to learn than how to manage your time, how to manage your schedule, like you will do when you go to college. Those of you who have been part of Upward Bound Summer, you know that we have squads. We have those tables with different cool names. You're assigned to them, but you get to vie for squad points, and you get to hopefully get the coveted College Bound swag. I don't know what it is this year. All I know is my squad is coming for it. But you need to be on the lookout because your squad leaders should have reached out today or will be reaching out tomorrow. We will be having meetings at least once a week for the next 2 weeks. And then once summer comes, we'll explain what that looks like a little bit more. But you're still going to get the chance to meet new people, meet different advisors, and get to be a part of our Upward Bound family. And then I also want everyone else to know that we spent the day today handing out senior celebration boxes, and we would like to invite you to our senior celebration that will take place as part of the Upward Bound College, the U of R College Bound show this Friday. I know we have some frequent viewers, so if you are allowed, or if you're available to tune in from 4 to 5, we'll be recognizing our seniors. And if you've been to our celebrations in the past, you know it's a little emotional. But they've worked very hard, and especially our juniors, you're going to want to turn in to see what you have coming for next year. So with that, those are the announcements we have for Upward Bound in our summer. I also want to remind everyone, such as Miss Amina here, please go ahead and drop your name in the chat. Please feel free to use that feature to make comments like Miss Kavan just did. I'm not trash talking, I'm just telling the truth. And we are going to be using this as a tool throughout the presentation to allow you to ask questions, ask clarifying questions, make comments. Maybe we can explain some more things. But if for some reason the chat feature isn't working for you, please go ahead and text our Upward Bound phone number. It is 585-301-4488, and I'll go ahead and drop it in the chat as well. So go ahead, let us know you're here, Everyone who is here watching live is going to be entered to win an essential oil diffuser. And I don't know about all of y'all, but I could use a little bit of a refresh in my apartment right now after months of being in here. You know, the windows open only does so much. So please go ahead and use that. Please ask questions. Like I said, we have 3 wonderful, wonderful guests here tonight. And if you maybe didn't see the flyer, or you're just like, what am I tuning in for? I just got like a message reminder. You're here to learn about fly-in programs and overnight visit programs. We, as Upward Bound, have take you to visit different colleges to see different places. We want you to get as much college exposure as possible, because how are you really going to know if you like a place until you visit it? Unfortunately, we can't take you to every single college across the country. We can't visit every place your heart desires. So there are these programs, which might be a really good alternative for some of you. And they are called fly-in programs, but we're also going to tie in the overnight visit programs too, just in case that might reason with you a little bit more. So fly-in programs, we're going to get into what they are, but I'm really excited to bring out my guests, and I will let them introduce themselves, say hi quick after I say their name. But first, some of our Upward Bound students, maybe you'll recognize her, maybe you won't, but I want to welcome Jada Aristilde to the program. She is an Upward Bound alum, Vanguard class of 2017. Jada has attended fly-in programs, so she's going to give us more of the student perspective. But she attended a fly-in program at Washington College, and now she is attending Washington College. She is class of 2021. Let's give it up for Jada. Woo! Jada, if you would just want to say a little hello, show your face.
Yeah, hi everyone.
All right, next we have Miss Sierra Cason. Sierra, although Rochester, I'm sure, is #1 in her heart, is actually the Assistant Director and Diversity and Access Coordinator for Tulane University. So Sierra, if you want to give a little, yeah. And then last but certainly not least, we are joined by Joe Latimer. Joe is the Assistant Dean for Enrollment, Diversity, and Outreach at the University of Rochester. So again, you see the theme of Rochester right here, but you're gonna see how far we really can go and how fly-in programs are the key or an opportunity to opening up your world, because metaphors. So thank you all again so much for being here. I will go ahead and actually, I'm gonna jump the first question to both Joe and Sierra. So just give us a little taste. What are fly-in programs and what do they look like at Tulane, at the U of R, respectively?
So I guess I'll start. So again, my name is Sierra Cason. I work at Tulane University, which is located in New Orleans, Louisiana. So a little far from Rochester. However, we get students from all over. And to me, essentially what a fly-in program is, specifically at Tulane, is it's an opportunity to provide access to see a university that in some ways, a student who maybe doesn't have the means to, or comes from a historically underrepresented background in higher education, can have the opportunity to do so. Tulane, we host 2 fly-in programs. So one in the fall for any prospective student who hasn't applied to Tulane yet. Tulane may be on their radar, but they haven't got to learn much about it. They haven't got to visit. They haven't heard much from us. They haven't really had an interaction. And so that's by application. And we select students who we think are truly strong candidates for the real admission process. Then in our spring, we have a second fly-in, and that's for admitted students. So these are now seniors who have applied and been accepted to Tulane. They come down. It's an overnight program, same thing, similar to the fall. But this is a special opportunity where these students get to interview for scholarship, additional scholarship, while they're on campus. For both of our programs, there are 3 days and 2 nights. We cover all costs for students. So flights from just about anywhere you can think of in the US, including Hawaii, Puerto Rico, as well as we provide meals. We go off campus into the city of New Orleans. We allow students to be able to sit in on classes, interact with current students. They stay in our residential halls and are hosted by current Tulane students. They get to meet faculty, staff, administration, as well as get to be very familiarized and meet and see our different resources on campus that typically are there and designed to support historically underrepresented students. So students of color, first generation college students, lower income students, LGBTQIA/SOC/ anything else that kind of intersects with that identity. But it's really a time to be an inclusive space for those students, giving them that opportunity to visit a campus that may be far away for them and they don't have the access to it. But I also like to plug, we do not just fly in students. If students are close enough to drive, we'll cover their mileage and gas and things like that, because this is open to all students. So sometimes we have students right from our backyard in New Orleans who can attend too. So though we call it a fly-in, it's a fly-in/drive-in. And it's really open to any student who's interested in Tulane that kind of identifies with a historical underrepresented background in higher ed. Joe, I'll hand it to you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. As Sierra was talking about the fly-in program at Tulane, it's remarkable how similar most of these programs are. They are meant, they're meant to showcase our colleges and universities to students that are traditionally underrepresented on our college campus. Yes, they include first generation students. They include students who are, from one of the underrepresented minority categories. At Rochester, we bring students to campus who are allies of, these student perspectives, LGBTQ+ as well. It's quite frankly for any student who's interested in understanding how we showcase and support students through an environment of access and inclusion. And so for the fall, students have to apply to our program. They tend to do that by early October. By late October, they hear of their opportunity to visit. And we typically drive our fly-in program or drive-in program, bus, train-in program around Veterans Day. So Veterans Day was Monday, November 11th. So students arrived on Sunday, November 10th. They arrive between 10 and 4. They have a lot of activities. We showcase the university. They have dinner with current students, etc. There's a multicultural expo, and then they attend an open house on Monday. And then there's an opportunity to have an admissions interview. They're hosted. They spend, 2 nights in a dorm room with a current student. And then usually on Tuesday, they're finding their way off campus. We don't reimburse students 100%. It's generally 50% up to $350. So 50% up to $350 of their costs of visiting the university. Like Tulane, we offer mileage reimbursement. For new students from New York City, we charter a bus and it costs them $40 to get on that bus, and it's about a 6-hour drive for those students. We generally try to bring up to 100 students to campus for our multicultural visitation program, which again is in the fall. For the spring, we called it Golden Ticket, which is named after Willy Wonka's Golden Ticket campaign to get students to our campus. And they meet these categories that I've mentioned earlier, and they've never been to campus before. So for MVP, they apply to it. For Golden Ticket, they don't have to apply because they've already been admitted to Rochester. We invite students to campus, up to 800 of them, and about 10% of our students decide to join us under the Golden Ticket campaign, and we yield most of those students. Parents and families don't get covered for reimbursement. They can come, but that's on their own costs. And finally, students have to attend the University of Rochester. They can't then bounce to another school and seek reimbursement. They have to find monies from that other school to do that. So there are some clauses within the reimbursement initiative. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you both. And I think even just hearing from both of you, like you touched on, Joe, programs can be very similar, but when you break things down, there are key differences to look for. So as you are interested in these programs, make sure you read that fine print, because you don't want to plan on getting one thing and getting another thing. And it's just good to also prepare yourself for, honestly, the real world. You got to read the fine print. You got to know what you're getting yourself into. But Ms. Jada, I'm going to turn it over to you. As a student, what did you get yourself into during these fly-in programs?
Yeah, so hi everyone, my name is Jada. Just to introduce myself again, I am a rising senior at Washington College. I major in sociology, I minor in justice, law and society, public health, and Hispanic studies. I am also currently the Secretary of Diversity and Inclusion for Student Government Association at Washington College. During my time spent in Upward Bound, I was able to participate in many overnight programs and visiting colleges in general. During those times, I was able to really experience what it was like to be on a college campus. It's one thing to see it on the brochures, but it's another thing to actually go there and kind of get a feel for the campus. Honestly, even though you're not able to visit, all of the colleges that you might be interested in, just kind of visiting a few of them that might pique your interest or maybe not even at all. It still gets to show you like what you might be interested in, and then sometimes definitely what you don't want to see or go to for the choice that you do choose. So that's kind of my overall experience visiting colleges.
Right, thank you. So something that both Joe and Sierra mentioned that was like immediately brought up in one of the parent questions was this application. So Joe, would you mind explaining what the U of R application is, and then we'll bounce back to Sierra and see if there's any differences for Tulane?
Sure, absolutely. The application is simply, sharing us general information about a student, name, address, high school. By the way, these are seniors, right? Prospective students. So they're seniors in high school for the fall program, admitted for the spring. And we want to know demographic information, and they are responding to 2 prompts. Generally, these prompts revolve around, their interest in issues of diversity, access, and inclusion. The other prompt revolves around Frederick Douglass and his association with Rochester, New York, and how important he was, and kind of keying off of that legacy. They submit a transcript. And we're test optional. So if a student says that they want to submit test scores, they will. It could be PSAT or SAT or ACT scores. If they don't want to submit scores, they don't have to. They just have to indicate that they're going to go test optional. So the reason that we request that information up front, the academic information, is we want to make sure that students are around the ballpark to be admitted. We don't want to set students up for disappointment. And so students generally get invited to campus if they are around the acceptable ranges, but yet we can't admit everyone. So if a student doesn't get admitted to our fall visitation program, it does not mean that they will not get admitted to the University of Rochester. And our language to students who aren't invited to campus says that. That's very important for students to understand. If you don't get invited, it doesn't mean you're not admissible. It's just that we have to make hard decisions based on the fact that hundreds apply, and we want to yield 100 of them from all over the country, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, very similar to Tulane.
Yeah, I would echo basically the same exact things as Joe said. Tulane's application is very similar. We're looking for that same type of information. We have 2 very similar prompts. We talk a lot about, what's a student's perspective on the diversity, access, inclusion, and equity. We also talk about how if they were to come to Tulane, how would they take a leadership role or spearhead or be a trailblazer in those initiatives on Tulane's campus. Our one difference is we're not test optional, but we only ask a student to submit an unofficial copy of test scores at the time of their application. Now, with everything going on with COVID-19 and a lot of tests being canceled, a lot of universities have made exceptions this year that they will be test optional. So I think right now for schools like Tulane, who just committed to being test optional for a year, and other universities that are very similar that also host fly-in programs, that's a really good question to ask this year. If you're going to make me apply, do I need to submit these test scores to be considered for the fly-in program, or am I good to opt out? I know that right now too, I think it's kind of a up in the air question. A lot of schools are still figuring out how to operate in this test optional model. But it's definitely, that is a valid question to ask as you work with different admission offices and apply to different programs. Outside of that though, similar like Joe said, I mean, we can't accept everybody. we take about 180 students per fly-in, but we get almost quadruple that in applications. So there's just not enough space, but that doesn't mean you're not qualified. And that doesn't mean a student will be rejected in regular admission rounds. So never take that to heart in that sense, but it's definitely, you know, just to be aware of the realities of just limitations in programming space and things like that.
Thank you. And so then, Miss Jada, if you can recall back to when you were doing this, I'm sure it was, you know, Vanguard, senior year, college application stress. So how did it feel like trying to get into these fly-in programs when I'm sure you had a million other things going on as well?
Yeah, I definitely think that Upward Bound made it super easy, and they relieved a lot of the stress that I would have endured if I had decided to go or engage in fly-in or overnight experiences on my own. A lot of it or all of it was set up through Upward Bound. And so really all I had to do was apply and show up, and then just, you know, experience the opportunity of visiting colleges both far and close to home. So definitely it was visiting and enduring the fly-ins and the overnights. I think it was like the most fun part about the whole application process and figuring out like what college I wanted to go to.
Thank you, Jada. And just so you know, Kivon right now is remembering a car ride that you two took. So some memories I'm sure are coming back. And just a reiterate, she's so proud of you. And we're all proud of you. Upward Bound, man. It works. Trio works. Hashtag it. So something though too that Jada, you brought up that I do want to touch on. So I'm going to turn to you, Joe, for this is fly-in programs are great. Yeah, let's get our students to Tulane. Let's get our students to visit Washington College. But what about in your own backyard? Like, what would you say to a kid who maybe was like, oh, but U of R, it's right there. I can walk there. Like, so what would you say to them in regards to applying to fly-in programs?
So I think I would say two things. Despite college campuses being in your own backyard, and I think Sierra can attest to this, they're worlds away. I mean, you know, you're surrounded by students from all over the country, from all over the world. And so, you know, you find yourself excited about introducing your city, your community to these students who don't know much about, you know, where you're from. For Thanksgiving, how wonderful it is to take someone home who can't make it, but they're from someplace unique and different, and you introduce them to Thanksgiving at your family's home. And so you can almost be an ambassador to your community by way of going to college in your own backyard, but yet immersing yourself in that community in a way that makes you feel like you're not very far away. I think the other thing is that, you know, if you're thinking about a tier 1 research university, then why not check ours out to understand maybe that Brandeis and Rice and, you know, Chicago and, you know, NYU and Emory are kind of like Rochester. So let me go test out Rochester. That would be different than if you're interested in a small liberal arts college like Washington College, right? We're very different than a smaller school like that. I'm not sure I would do a test drive at Rochester to understand what Washington College is like, but I might go to Hobart and William Smith College's overnight program because it would be more like Washington College, and let me see what the feel is like at a small liberal arts college in a smaller town. So you could use it as a test drive to understand other like colleges that you might be interested in. Right. So those are the two things that I would say.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. And I think too, I certainly felt it as a high schooler, like, I don't want to go to the same college everyone else is going to, but that's the situation that happened for me and I loved it. And it was an overnight visit program, not flying. I got to drive there and everything. It wasn't, you know, whatever. But it's what really gets you. And so Joe, you're talking about being like an ambassador to these students and getting to know students. So Jada, when you visited Washington College, were you sort of paired up with a student, and how was that like versus just sitting in an admissions presentation?
Yeah, so I really like the overnight experience that I got to experience at Washington College. I can't remember if it was after I was accepted into the program. So I got accepted into Washington College on a full ride. It was previously named George's Brigade Scholarship, but now it's called Washington Scholars. And so once you're accepted, you get to come in and you stay for like I think 2 days and 1 night, or 3 days and 2 nights. They have this very strategic way of connecting students with students who are already on campus. And it's crazy because I was connected with a female student, and we ended up being like best friends until she graduated. And so definitely they were very strategic in the way in which we got to experience other students. It was students that we were paired with that had kind of similar backgrounds from or to us. So actually there was a student, she was from Rochester, also from Upward Bound, same program, and like we were in the same program together, and she went to Washington College, and I actually ended up being paired with her, and she kind of helped me navigate my way into Washington College and kind of find my place on the campus. So it was really, really wonderful.
Yeah, I think all of us can attest to how great it is to have that person, and I'm so glad it worked out and you got a friend. And I'm assuming it was kind of like a little taste of home, like, you know, Washington College, it's far away, I don't know what's going on, but like I have this little person that gets it. And that's something to look forward to as you're looking for colleges. And that's where, when we're saying things like fit and feel and stuff, like this is what we want you all to get it. I'm talking more to the students right now, but parents too, as you're encouraging your students to do these things, like asking them the questions, like, did you connect with somebody? Could you see yourself being here? That's the whole point of these programs. Yeah, like I want to go visit New Orleans, that'd be great, but like it's more to it than just this is where my college is. It's like I'm part of this community. But let's get back on the parent train, because this is a video for you parents. So Sierra, when it comes to parents and everything like this, because I mean, we're sharing really great things that happen at these flying programs, but what would you want parents to know, especially just if they were to go from Rochester to Tulane? Like, what are the benefits? How should they encourage, like all these things? Like, you're great with words, so just, yeah.
So, okay, a few things that I would want parents to know. I think I'll give you a little bit of the whole spectrum, right? Kind of the good, the great, the middle, and then things to like actually really consider and think that I don't know that everybody always thinks about. So I think on the good side, right, you're getting this opportunity for somebody, this university, Tulane, to, you know, be able to bring your child to a school like Tulane, far away from home, allowing them to have that experience. I work with so many parents, and a lot of parents are like, this is my baby's first time leaving home. She never got on a plane. Who's picking her up? What is she going to eat? Right? Like the whole parent rundown. And I'm responsible for them all weekend, me and other people. I can't do 180 by myself, but you know, I'm that point person. And so I have to be very thorough, and actually like talking to parents helps me make sure I'm double checking every week. Have we covered all grounds to make sure students are taken care of? They're going to be safe. They're going to be protected. They're going to be included. They're going to be educated through all of this, because it's more like than Felicia said, just a trip to New Orleans. This is a whole little quick 3 days of your life, but there's so much that goes into just daily life on a regular. So I think one, it's to know it's okay to ask schools those questions, ask those logistics. Most schools will always send out all of the information in writing, but make sure you have a contact number for somebody. Make sure you did receive everything in writing. A lot of times too, schools tend to send stuff to the student's email. We try to make sure parents are copied on, but sometimes a student doesn't always add their parent information. So make sure too, if you want that information, just request it. Two, I always encourage parents to, I know that sometimes we only think about this solely through like a student's lens, right? 17 years old, excited, like, oh shoot, I'm about to leave Rochester, I'm going to New Orleans, like I'm about to be having a good time. And like parents are like, oh my gosh, I've never been there. What is this place like, you know? And I just so encourage you to not let your fears of the unknown stop you from your child's opportunities. I've had a lot of parents who are very afraid of the thought of their child being so far away from home, or being in a city where there's a lot of stereotypes about what goes on here. And they've stopped their student from having that opportunity and said, no, I don't think Tulane's gonna be a good fit. I don't think New Orleans is gonna be a good fit. And when I talk to the student, it's a whole nother story, and it's a very different perspective of what they're looking for. So I encourage you to give them some lead and some leeway in making these choices about these programs. Know that they'll come back. It's only a 2 or 3 day event, and then you guys can have that conversation, but really try to, you know, give them that space to take on that opportunity so that they can see whether or not it's going to be a good fit for them. I think some other things to think and keep in mind. This is usually what I'm not sure always gets thought out. So one, these programs are great. You know, a lot of times there's reimbursement or it's fully covered and everything's going to be taken care of, but know that that's only for that program. Let's say, right, hypothetically, Jada had come to Tulane all the way from Rochester. We had covered everything for her. That's it. Now, if Jada really wants to be at Tulane, that's additional finances a family is going to have to factor in. Can you afford flights back and forth during, you know, at least 2 major breaks? What does that look like if something happens and you're not close to home or easy accessibly to get to your student? You know, just kind of thinking of all this. How do you move from one major city to another 4 times every year? So are we paying for storage? Do we drive twice a year? You know, there's a lot of other small little details to think through. And sometimes I think a student family, they're so excited. They're like, yes, go. Oh my gosh. The parents are like, I can't wait to come visit you. Oh, I'm going to be in the French Quarter having a good time, you know, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, shoot, wait. Okay, tickets are like $400 per person. Oh, I didn't think that we need to, all this stuff I bought you because I was so excited for you to decorate your room. Oh, now we got to do something with it, you know? So think through all of those small details, because sometimes I think that gets forgotten. And that's a little bit harder when you're moving further away and you're not in your own backyard. And maybe Jada can attest to some of that too. And just what do you do in those situations and knowing all the logistical stuff. I think another thing too is definitely just asking though your student when they come back, you guys should talk about the experience, you know, really debrief on it. I know sometimes it can be kind of a whirlwind. You're like, my student does Upward Bound, they play basketball, they're applying for 10 colleges. Like, I don't know, I can't keep track anything, but really take time to like debrief with them about what that experience was like. Because what Joe said earlier, though you may not be able to visit all colleges, you might be able to visit, you know, 2, 3, 4, but those show you a perspective of what that kind of general type of college is. And you should be talking through all of those things because I think it is going to help you really understand where's your student at, what can you give as a parent to allow them to have that opportunity if that's what they ultimately want in a college, but really to have realistic conversations too about what that experience was, and encourage your student to be honest and truthful with you about that. Because I agree with Jada, all the brochures look pretty, all the websites look pretty, all the social media looks pretty, but there is a lot of behind the scenes and there's real life and there's nitty gritty. And so you really want to make sure that you're having that conversation with your student and debriefing about what that experience ultimately is. And then I think the last piece of kind of information or insight or advice I would also give, especially when I think about what Tulane multicultural fly-ins look like, and many others for some of my, you know, talking to other colleagues at other universities, typically these are predominantly white institutions that are hosting these events, which means most of the population at that university is white. But these fly-ins are designed for students who are historically underrepresented, which typically means students of color. Identify with that however you please. But a lot of times too, I think sometimes it can be misleading if schools are not forward and direct. So I always tell my students when they come, you know, they're so excited, they're hyped, they're like, oh my gosh, the energy is great, Tulane is lit, we want to turn up, New Orleans, you know, and I have to give them the real by the end of the weekend. You know, I'm like, so you guys, let's talk about this, because though this was great and you met 179 other people that look like you, sound like you, share something similar, get the culture, understand your hair care problems when you go away from home and don't have your barber or your hairdresser, you know, understand the food you eat, the language you speak. The rest of the university might not look like that. And they're probably not going to look like that. And you have to be able to pull yourself out of the context of 3 days and say, well, what is this going to look like for 4 years when I'm not in a program designed for people of color for 3 days? And I've had a lot of students, you know, go loved it, did both the fly-ins, end up coming to Tulane, and then they're like, wait, Miss Sierra, this is what I can't, like, this is, and I'm like, we talked about this, you know, and they have to, it can be a culture shock. So I think too, just being realistic about truly understanding what is the purpose of a fly-in, what you might experience there, but also knowing that there's going to be another reality throughout the regular actual school year. And I'm sure Jada can attest to that. We were kind of talking about some of those things right before this started, but just, you know, understand that these are fly-ins where a lot of people may feel really connected to them because you share similarities, but the university as a whole may be a very different space than what you're used to and who you are, and what that's going to be like in that transition come the real year. But I'll stop talking. Those are just some of my things I think about, but I'll hand it back to you, Felicia.
Felicia.
Do a mic drop for Sierra right there. I was just like, this is gold. But yes, Jada, go ahead.
If you don't mind, I would just like to agree and just like reiterate like the two main points or 2 points that stuck out to me. Definitely like the brochures and everything, they look nice, but actually you have to remember you're going to be there for 4 years. And so after all the hype is gone from visiting and seeing people and being in a different place and all that free food and all that great stuff, you have to remember you're going to be there, you know, 24/7 for the rest, you know, for the rest of the 4 years that you'll be at the institution. So definitely looking and remembering, you know, all the mundane things that you have to encounter on a day-to-day basis, because then that's going to become your new norm. And so if you don't feel like you can adjust, you know, well there, that's something that, you know, you should always keep in mind when looking into attending an institution. And definitely like the logistics of it all that caught me off guard. After, you know, we drove down from Rochester to Washington College in like this huge minivan. We packed my room, and the first break came over December, and we had to like move our things out of the room. And I'm like, well, this is interesting because I didn't think this far ahead. And then after, you know, the year was over, and now we have all this stuff that we have to like get rid of for like the summer, and then move back in the next year. And so definitely thinking about plane tickets, thinking about storage, thinking about, you know, grocery shopping, thinking about your barber, you know, just all the mundane, normal things that you will and you normally engage with on a day-to-day basis. You should always keep that in mind when thinking about going to an institution.
Yeah, and I want to echo the fact that like students, you and parents, you are in the very much right to ask those colleges those kinds of questions. If it's the only example that's coming to my head right now is we had a student who practiced a specific religion, and it was a different religion that the school was associated with. So I was like, you need to ask, is there a safe space for you to pray on campus? And it's something that, you know, to her was just like, oh, well, of course I'm, you know, she hasn't had to face that adversity, but which I'm thankful for, but she's going to a new place where that just might be, how do you handle that? And like, will you have all those needs met? You know, if you are used to being part of, I have another student I'm thinking of who is really involved with their church and like their church choir and everything. Is there another like church nearby that you'd feel comfortable going to, or how, like, would you prefer to be closer to home so you can attend service, or what does that look like? So there's all facets of your life. And to go back to the flying programs, this is a good time. You're living those days, and yes, they're almost like dream days because, as Sierra mentioned, like you're surrounded by these great people and they're telling you these wonderful things and everything's pretty, and they happen to serve you all the best food during this time. I will forever say the best food comes during college visits. So you have to really think through, yes, this is great and you can see the best it can be, but like ask those questions. No one's going to get mad at you because they're keeping it real. You are genuinely thinking about your future. And as we like to say in Upward Bound, this is your bay. It's 4 years of bay. All right. Are you going to put up with a bay that never calls because they're like busy all the time? Are you going to put up with a bay that's too far away? No, you need what you need, and that's okay. And that's going to look different for everybody. So all these points are also making me think, not to go on like a little soapbox, but as your friends, maybe you and your friend go to the same flying program, and maybe your friend like really vibes with a flying program or a college and stuff. It's okay that you guys don't go to the same college. Like, you have to be honest about what you want and what you need, because this is your college experience. So that's, I'm going to get off this, and actually I'm going to hit it back to you, Jada, because the follow-up question I had was, can you talk to us now about what visiting Washington College was like versus you've lived there 3 years, you're going on your 4th year?
Yeah, definitely. So I remember the dream days of visiting Washington College. I actually I got the opportunity to visit twice. I didn't realize the second time that I went back that it was the college that I visited, I think the previous year, and I kind of fell in love with the environment of the college. I visited Washington College the first time, I think my sophomore year, and then again my junior year. And the second time it kind of solidified, like, I really, really, really love this campus. It's a beautiful campus. The people, I'm walking down the street, you know, in Rochester, and people are just like straight facing you. You walk down the street in Chestertown, everyone's smiling. So I'm like, wow, like everyone's really nice here. It was very a close-knit community. And I don't know, the students were very open. They were very kind. It was just everything good, you know? And so I think it came like after moving in, you know, getting accepted and everything, and moving in my freshman year, kind of reality started like creeping in slowly, kind of like that high that you're on. You know, I just got to college, like, you know, I have college friends, like, let me call my mom, I'm at college, mom, you know what I mean? And then after a while, it's kind of like, okay, this is something that I have to do every single day. I have to get up and go to class every single day. Like, I have to eat the same food every single day. I have to go grocery shopping and actually cook for myself when I'm hungry. So it's definitely an adjustment. I would say though, it definitely makes you more independent, and it kind of speeds up the growing and growth process. Especially I did it on my own. So I went away to college. So I guess, like, to answer your question, there was like an adjustment period from, you know, initially setting foot on the campus and like saying, I will never leave this place ever, never, never, never. And then kind of 3 years into it, like, I'm ready to go ahead and get out of here, get my degree, you know what I mean, and get that job. Yeah, that'd be it for me.
Well, thank you. Yeah, no, those 3 days are beautiful, but everyone gets sick of their college at some point, I have to say. And I'm sorry if I'm not spitting facts. But thank you so much. And I know we've really talked a lot about how great these are, the real, like, having these 3 days or however long it is, then go home and think about it for real. But let's talk about getting you into these 3 days, because that's kind of an important thing, right? Part of the application. So Joe, if we have students who, you know, if there's a particular school, or if there's just, they really do want to go to these fly-in programs, what are some ways that you would recommend, or that you would tell students that are ways to like improve their chances? Or how do you go in knowing that like you've done the best application? Like,
Sure.
you know.
Yeah, sure. I think most high school students and family members don't know that admissions offices assign counselors areas of the country and of the world. And so I am responsible for students for a borough of New York and the Caribbean. And so anybody who contacts the Office of Admissions at the University of Rochester and says, hey, I'm from Bronx, New York, can I please get in touch with your admissions counselor responsible for students from my area? That's me. That student then reaches out to me, and we develop a relationship. And that student asks me a series of questions. Family members are, you know, encouraged to do the same, and they start to demonstrate interest. Mr. Latimer, it's great to meet you. There's so much that I want to learn about Rochester. Tell me about your virtual events. When should I have an admissions interview? And I understand that you have a fall program called MVP. Tell me more about it. Great, Mr. Latimer, I'm sure going to be applying. I'll let you know when I've done so. Create the relationship. And by creating a relationship, we're getting to know these students better. And the more we know students, the best decision we can make on their behalf. So that enthusiasm, self-advocacy needs to shine through. And so I would encourage students to contact those admissions offices, ask who's responsible for students from Rochester, New York, and develop that relationship and start to put your best foot forward, because that then can support an application to these fly-in programs.
All right, thank you, Joe. Yeah, so all you Upward Bound kids out there who, they don't want to send those emails, it's important because Joe is the person reading those applications. Like, it's not just, you on an application are a series of numbers and data, but it's when you email, it's when you write that, like when you put your heart and soul into that personal statement, it's when you make that effort to call and talk and like you share a little bit about yourself. It's when they see that person, but they not only see the person, they see, is this going to be a good student at my university? They will see you joining clubs. They will envision you in the classroom. They create this picture of you. And you want to give them as much detail as possible. And Miss Jada, go ahead.
I also just have something to add to that as well. So I remember during my application, I received a call from admissions or someone working with admissions on my application specifically. And this was after I had applied to receive the scholarship. And so basically they were following up. I think I got like a D, I think, in one of my courses. And so they were asking like, a lot of like follow-up questions, like, what course was this? Like, why was it that you scored so low? And like all these types of questions. And I would just like to say, if you ever do receive follow-up calls or emails asking about like a specific aspect of your GPA or a class or an extracurricular or anything of that nature, don't allow that to deter you from continuing the process. Because I thought that like that was end all be all. And then literally the next week I received my my packet in the mail saying that I was accepted and I received my scholarship. So I would just definitely say, like, if you do follow up or if someone follows up with you and you might be a little weary of, them asking about like your GPA or a class that you hated so you never really went, definitely do not allow that to deter you from continuing your college application.
Yeah. Felicia, if I can just add one more thing, there are a lot of students who apply for MVP who don't get admitted to come because their application remains incomplete, despite us telling those students that your application is incomplete. And once that deadline comes, that's it. There's no going back to submit materials. And that's true of the application process. We nudge students to say, you're missing information, please get it to us. And so Jada can attest that you're going to get lots of emails from colleges and universities because you go to these college fairs and you sign up for information. Now you're bombarded and you're trying to juggle your, senior year, all this coursework, extracurricular activities, and your inbox is jammed with stuff from us. And you got to prioritize what's coming in, unsubscribe from those schools that you're not interested in, and keep those 10 to 12 schools, sending you stuff, and pay attention to all those details. Because when we when we tell students you're not invited to MVP because your stuff was incomplete, you're like, oh my gosh, sorry, right? So you're busy, but you got to maintain just a semblance of normalcy through it all, sanity through it all, so that you can keep all your ducks in a row and make sure that stuff is in that needs to be in.
Mm-hmm. And a good way to keep your ducks in a row is to start working on those ducks pretty early. I'm sure that everyone can attest here that waiting until the day of at 4:55 when it's due at like 5 or 5:30 is not the way to do it. As Sierra and Joe have talked about, there are so many students wanting to go to these fly-ins. And yes, obviously there's always a chance if you apply, you won't get accepted to it, but you need to even just put in the freaking application so you have a chance. Like, you're never going to have the chance to go to explore a new part of Rochester maybe, or go to New Orleans, or go to Washington College if you don't fill out the application. And just put it out there, and then they'll make the decision whether or not. And again, it doesn't mean you can't go like for school, and maybe it means you have to do like a different tour, maybe a virtual tour. Like, it's not the end all be all, but you need to put it in to even go. Okay. You're making your decision for yourself if you don't submit it. And I think that's one of the most frustrating things, is when you have an applicant or a student who would be very great, but they never finish it. So get it, work on it early. You've heard that they require essays, that you require like things to be sent. You can't walk into your guidance counselor's office 10 minutes before the end of the school day and demand they put something in the mail that day. It's just, you have to be considerate and courteous of other people too. And again, I apologize for getting on my soapbox. I'm not one of the panelists, I'm sorry. But I guess the last thing I want to touch on, please, if you do have any last minute questions, throw them in the chat, send them to me. We can try to get to them. But I think something that's on everybody's mind too is just COVID-19. We're in a pandemic. I'm not sure if colleges are, I know that colleges are releasing plans for the fall and they're doing modified semesters and everything. But from, I guess, all of your point of view, what are some, like, pursuing fly-in programs, what does that look like? Virtual visitations, what does that look like? Like, what should our juniors, because essentially that's the target audience, be doing? Because they still need to get this information, even if a personal or in-person visit isn't possible.
Yeah, so I guess I can start. I'd say, so right, just like Felicia said, a lot of schools, since everything's kind of shut down and stuff, have moved to virtual admission platforms. So they're hosting events like this, they're doing student panels, they're doing full-on programming virtually. So make sure you're definitely checking those out. You can usually find most of those types of opportunities right on their admission websites. They give you opportunities to sign up from. There's virtual campus tours. There might be specific tours like all about the residence hall or all about the dining hall, things like that. But really be engaging as much as you can, because right now that is your way of getting as much information as possible without the opportunity of in-person visits. I think, like I kind of mentioned earlier, I think what's happening to fly-ins this upcoming fall is maybe still kind of up in the air for many schools as we kind of figure out what are the procedures and policies we have to follow to keep everybody safe and healthy. But it's okay to check in. You know, I've been getting tons of emails just wondering, you know, I saw the information about your fly-ins on your website. When will that application open? And though we don't know right now, we should have everything rolled out definitely, you know, by July. And I think most schools will have some sort of information they can give you by mid-July, end of July, before kind of the school year starts. But even if you don't have the opportunity to do these in person this year, which is unfortunate, but will not be held against you. Obviously, like, this is out of the whole world's control that this is happening. But if they even do a virtual something, take part in that, participate. There will probably be students involved, current students. Might be able to meet other students who are also looking at that school, you know, have virtual setups and hangouts and things like that. So still, I would encourage you to take advantage of it if it is going to be virtual. And if it is going to be modified or limited, might not be 180 or 100 students, maybe it's only going to be 30 or 50, still go for it. Like Felicia said, you get in your own way by not submitting an application, and you never know what that outcome can be. So definitely, you know, if you feel safe enough to apply and go to one of these events, I would encourage you to do it, even if it isn't a modified version, because I think you'll still be able to get something out of it.
Excuse me. What I will add is that, you know, these virtual events for us were kind of back burner activities. It was always, you know, get them to campus in person. That's the most important thing that we can do, is to meet students face to face at their high school, college fairs, interviews off campus, you know, open houses on campus, etc. But what we've realized during this time is that if we build virtual platforms with lots of content, and content that we never offered before, students and family members and counselors are going to come to learn more. So we're continuing to think through different types of opportunities for students so that they can continue to get excited about the University of Rochester. I'm of the belief that we won't have MVP this fall, given what the College of Arts and Sciences has shared about what we can expect for our returning students, our incoming students, that it won't be a possibility. But if we get to the spring and we're at probably a new normal, but there's a vaccine, you can expect that we will have MVP in the spring for 2 days for admitted students. That's our hope. So do the virtual stuff now and learn. And then our hope is that we can get you to campus in the springtime for, you know, a similar kind of experience. That's our hope.
I agree with Sierra and Joe. I know for a lot of students, especially students, juniors and seniors looking to go to college, they might feel deterred to, like, you know, submit their applications or even apply because they feel, you know, as if the whole world is kind of on a pause. But definitely institutions are still working. They're just finding different and engaging ways to transfer a lot of the processes that we had to do in person So definitely like, don't be deterred, definitely submit your applications, get engaged. A lot of it, like Joe said, is virtual, but everyone's hoping by the spring, some things will become like a new normal and we can begin to do a lot more things in person. So definitely don't let like our current state of social and political deter you from anything that you had planned before all of this happened.
Thank you. And I think that is the perfect way to wrap up this little info session. We've touched on everything. Everyone's head's probably spinning at home, but thank you so much. The good thing is it's on YouTube, so you can rewatch this for the great information. But I just want to kind of some key points that really stuck out to me, sort of like a wrap up, you know. One, visiting costs, they're going to vary, whether it's because you're taking a plane or just about how much the school reimbursed. So you are in every right to know how much and just know how much to expect. So make sure as you're applying for flying programs, if you get accepted, you're doing that, make sure you're asking those questions. And again, it's perfectly okay to ask. No one's going to get mad if you ask how much you get reimbursed. It's money. Everyone needs to know about their money, right? Two, do I need to submit test scores? This is a really odd year. And colleges are going to take that into account. They can't hold it against you if there's no SAT to take. So make sure to ask those questions, make sure to see what they will need. But also with that, so if like we have a sophomore who's watching this, but then next year, or, you know, math, so things might go back to a quote unquote new normal. So always ask, and colleges are always changing policies, they're updating, they're adapting, they're finding new things. So always follow up on what exactly they need, test optional, not test optional, all that stuff. Just keep in the know. But then also, and I just want to hammer this point home, create a relationship, whether it's to do this fly-in program, whether it's to get accepted into a college. They want to know who you are as a person, and they want to know how you are going to be as a student. I don't think there's anyone who's like, oh, I'm never going to admit this type of student. They're just like, no, we want to know who is going to be the student that brings Tulane, Washington College, U of R, et cetera, to like that their mission and their goal, and they're going to be a good representation of the school. Other than that, just apply for the fly-in programs, guys. Get those applications in. These, you know, when we go on trips with Upward Bound, you love it and you love seeing the schools and everything's so pretty. You want to get that experience, so please go and get it. Again, we can't take you everywhere, but we want to get you as many places as possible. Yes, Jada.
Sorry, just one quick keynote. On one of my experiences, I think Kayvon can attest to this. We're pretty sure we've seen Barack Obama. So you never know. You never know who you see in these fly-in or overnight experiences.
So just like a little asterisk, you may meet someone really important and really famous. But no, for real, you never know what those experiences are going to be. You could go and learn something like, oh, I didn't know that this was like a thing. I introduced a lot of people to fried pickles. Like, you know, you just introduce people to different things, and they could be the best things of your life. But thank you all again so much for taking the time, for being here and giving such great information. I've had a blast. This has been fun. And then just to everyone watching at home, I just want to remind you again, summer program does start June 29th. It's coming up. Go watch the town hall video if you haven't. It talks about what virtual program looks like. It's going to talk about what these summer stipends look like. And again, if you can, join us for the senior celebration. They've worked hard. Class of 2020, come, show up, give some love, and then class of 2021, know what you're getting into. Again, please leave a comment in the chat if you were here so you can have a chance to win that essential oil diffuser, or go ahead and text us. I dropped it in the chat, but the number is 585-301-4488. And everyone at home, let's just give a round of applause for our amazing panelists because they did so great. Thank you all so much, and I hope you have a fabulous rest of your it's still pretty bright out, pretty bright Wednesday here in Rochester. All right, have a good night, everyone.